Xabi Alonso lasted 233 days at Real Madrid. He had won the Bundesliga 2 seasons ago and went unbeaten. So what actually broke at Madrid? And more importantly, does Chelsea have the pieces to fix it? This is the invisible pieces. What worked, what didn't, and whether Stamford Bridge has the parts to make Xabi's system successful. Starting with what actually happened at Leverkusen, because everything after this is measured against it. Alonso's base shape was a back three that restructured into a front five the moment they had the ball. 3 centre-backs and 2 holding midfielders stay back to control the ball, while the 2 wing-backs push up all the way to the last line, manufacturing a front 5 from a back 3. Nearly half of Leverkusen's goals that season came through those 2 wide players alone, 39 goal contributions from Frimpong and Grimaldo. And inside that space, the third-man combination. 2 central players trade a quick pass to drag the defender out of position, and then a third player breaks into the gap they just created. And with that structure, Leverkusen went unbeaten in the league, first time in Bundesliga history. Now, let's talk about his time at Madrid. Alonso didn't bring the system with him. He opened the season in a 4-3-3 and then spent 7 months oscillating between that and versions of his own shape depending on the opponent. He tried to be adaptable. He dropped either the fullback to form his back three, similar to the Leverkusen system, while he had pushed Bellingham forward as an additional attacker. On paper, the control was still there, actually more passes per game than Leverkusen ever had, but control against the weaker sides isn't the test. Let's look at this game against Atletico Madrid, a physical and disciplined side. Defensive duel success dropped to under 55%. The compact mid-press that defined Leverkusen stopped functioning. And look at this clip where Atleti were able to play through with the distance covered from Valverde being too much in the press. And Madrid struggled to play against Atleti's press too, with no outlet in this clip right here when they looked to build up. But the deeper issue wasn't tactical, it was personal. Reports at the time were consistent that the stars, Vinicius, hadn't really fully brought into his methods, and Alonso didn't have the total control he had at Leverkusen. His system at Leverkusen worked because low-ego players executed a rigid structure without resistance, while Madrid had 3 superstars who weren't going to rearrange their games around anyone's system, especially one that doesn't cater to their strengths. So a day after a Supercopa defeat final against Barcelona, he was gone. Now let's talk about Chelsea themselves. Here's where it gets interesting, because most people think Chelsea had a bad season, and they did. They finished 10th with 52 points and no European football. Their worst finish in years. But let's look at the underlying numbers. Chelsea actually produced the second highest expected goals in the entire Premier League, behind only Manchester City, meaning they created a lot of very good chances but underperformed in scoring them. Their process actually pointed to a 5th place finish. They underperformed their own numbers by roughly 8 goals, which is one of the largest process versus results gaps anywhere in the league this year. And on the other side of the ball, Chelsea pressed harder than anyone in England, as shown by their lowest PPDA in the league, ahead of Arsenal and ahead of City. So, in a season where there were 3 different managers for their young squad, 3 different systems in one season, they still managed to have an elite chance creation and elite pressing intensity. So Alonso isn't walking to a broken team. He's walking to a team that already does the 2 hardest things that he does in his system. He just needs to be able to steer the ship. So, now let's move on to another question. Can Alonso actually play his famed back 3 system? At Leverkusen, every centre-back could progress the ball, even the backup. Tapsoba posted better progressive passing numbers than most starting midfielders elsewhere. Chelsea had exactly one player that profiles that way, and that's Levi Colwill. Levi Colwill is the best passer among the back 3, but he's also their best creator, and he missed almost their entire 2025-26 season with an ACL injury and couldn't feature much, but he will definitely be needed by Alonso this season. Wesley Fofana, by contrast, is highly accurate with his passes at over 92%, but is almost entirely conservative. 3 chances created only an entire 38-game season. It will be something that Alonso will certainly work on with Fofana. And now the new incoming signing, Maxence Lacroix. He is a different type of player, more of a threat going forward at Crystal Palace, but through long balls and crosses, not line-breaking passes. And he brings his own baggage with 2 penalties conceded and a red card this season. So if Alonso lines up with Colwill, Lacroix and Fofana as his back 3, the entire progression job of that line sits on Levi Colwill, and that's something that Chelsea have to think about going forward. But if we talk about the wing-back situation, it's actually in much better shape. On the right, you have Gusto, James, and a new arrival, Marco Palestra, signed specifically to play this role and rated as Serie A's best young defender last season. And on the left, Although Marc Cucurella was sold to Real Madrid this summer, Jarell Hato can still fill in, and there's even conversation about converting Pedro Neto into a wing-back, the same way Alonso had Frimpong converted from his way at right-back into a wing-back at Leverkusen. So it's not settled, but it's a genuine position battle and exactly what you want for Alonso when you're creating this new system. Now talking about the midfield, everybody assumes Alonso needs another Xhaka in the midfield, and he actually did go for Granit Xhaka, but the move fell through. But if you look at what Xhaka and Palacios did, Chelsea already have the pieces. One plays as a progressive passer, while the other one is a destroyer who wins duels and rotates underneath. So with these two profiles in mind, Chelsea already have Caicedo, who plays the Palacios job with his high duels, high fouls, and genuine ball winner. And Enzo can also fill Xhaka's role. His underlying numbers will actually show him that he was playing more advanced than Xhaka ever were at Leverkusen. But I suspect that they would deploy him as Argentina did this World Cup in a lower playmaker role with Caicedo doing the dirty work. And this will result in more progressive passing and their ability to withstand the counters. Now, talking about their front line, the system doesn't have wingers as the width comes from the wing backs. So the front three is a striker and two number 10s pinching narrow into the half spaces. So João Pedro will drop in as the link forward, and either side of him will be Palmer and Morgan Rogers. So as we've putting this together, Chelsea have agreed a verbal deal for Morgan Rogers at around £117 million. He chose Chelsea over Arsenal, and at that fee he's a starter for this squad for Alonso. Last season, he contributed 10 goals and 6 assists for Villa, playing in between that role off the left of the 4-2-3-1. And he can also take part for Alonso in Chelsea in that left-hand side exactly, while Palmer takes the right, and similar to what Wirtz did at Leverkusen. So both of those players can cut into their stronger foot, and two mirror 10s floating at either side of João Pedro, which is exactly what Wirtz and Hoffmann were for Leverkusen during their unbeaten league title run. With the quality of Palmer also ready for a bounce-back season and Rodgers coming off a strong World Cup, it looks like Chelsea's front line will be more potent next season and overperform rather than underperform their XG. So, what's actually possible here for Chelsea, realistically? Nobody should expect a Leverkusen-style invincible season because the Premier League's physicality and squad depth will make it close to impossible in year one under a new manager. But if you look at the team's underlying numbers, as we mentioned last season, second highest XG and the most intense press, undone by the chaos and finishing luck and not a broken process. So if Alonso can fix the chaos and add this lethal front three in a settled shape, that could be a top 4 team at minimum and more if the players can buy into the system. So put it together, you get this: a manager whose system is proven and a club whose underlying numbers already say that they belong to the elite, and a squad that almost position by position has everything he needs. This is some squad that Chelsea fans could really be excited about going into next season. That is all for the breakdown. Thank you for watching. I'm the Third Runner. Like and subscribe for more Hidden Place breakdowns.